Hello, welcome to the lesson that's all about sewing and how to get those routines and procedures in place when the students are sewing. This, honestly, is my baby. This is one of the things that I felt like I truly thrived at. The very first thing you need to do is when they walk in the door, you still have the bell work. They come in, they sit down, and they do their bell work. They do the question. And then as soon as they're done, they get right to work. They grab their tote that has their name on it and it's all their stuff that they need, and they go and they get right to work. The last year that I taught, I had 20 students, and they're not the best students, but I had 20 students and they were awesome. I mean, I would just sit and just look around my room so much because all 20 of them are working at the same time. But what if your students aren't working on what they're supposed to be working on and they're messing around and not doing their job? And basically you have to start using your consequences and following through. And there's more information about consequences in the consequence lesson further down on your module 1. But something a little different that I did in my sewing class is that I actually took those students and I set them right beside my desk. For one, they were all by themselves then, and they didn't really have anybody to talk to. And for two, they were kind of out in the open, so I could definitely see what exactly they were doing. And it was just kind of embarrassing for them to have to sit by themselves because, I was up and helping other people, but I could always easily watch them as they're working. So that is a quick tip on consequences. The last thing is cleanup. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but I gave 5 minutes for cleanup, and I'll tell you the details in just a minute. Now, finding projects. This sometimes, whenever I was first starting out, I would have students look for projects for 2 or 3 days. And so I had to kind of stop doing that, and I gave them the rule that they had 1 class period to find 3 to 4 projects. And if they didn't, then it was homework. And so that kind of stopped a lot of the I'm searching for something so long. But if they didn't find something that day, then I, a lot of times, kept past students' directions. And then I was just able to hand them over directions and say, here you go. This is now what you're starting until you bring another project in. Also, just a note, a lot of them use Pinterest to find their stuff. I don't know if your school allows that or not, but that was pretty common that they use Pinterest, and they would just get several of them that they were thinking about on a Pinterest board. Okay, so tracking student projects. When students are using their current project, they have a copy of their directions, but they also need to make an extra copy and put it in a hanging folder. And then they actually make boxes that these hanging folders fit right in. They're like plastic boxes. I will put a link in the downloads portion of this lesson so you have an idea of what kind of box I'm talking about. But this is really handy whenever they're working on a project and you don't have to kind of deal with their unorganized mess of directions. You can just pick this up and it's handy. You can look at it as they're looking at their directions and kind of solve the problem together. So part of students' cleanup at the end of the hour is telling me what they accomplished that day. So there is a template for you to use in the downloads of this lesson, but basically, at the end of the hour, they're cleaning up and they're sitting down to write down what they have accomplished. And I did this for a couple reasons, and I encourage you to do it because of this. But for one, it helps you with grading. It gives you an idea on their grading. But two, it also gives them a sense of accomplishment. It kind of boosts their self-confidence to see how much they did. And if they problem solved during that hour and they were able to write about it, like that just gives them that much more confidence when it comes to problem solving. So I highly encourage that you have students write down exactly what they did every day. The last one is the list of tasks. And basically, when I had sewing projects, students had to do certain things within these projects. They could pick their own projects, but these tasks had to be completed. So it might be something like they had to put in a zipper, they may had to put in a button, or they had to repair clothing. There's several different things that they had to do, but they would check mark off each time that they completed one of those tasks. And that just kind of helped them know how many tasks they completed, and it helped the teacher know how they were doing on each task. That also is a template that is in your downloads of this lesson for you to use if you so choose to do. So cleanup. I've kind of given you some of the details on cleanup already, but let's go ahead and talk about cleanup just to make sure that I've explained it well enough. The last 5 minutes in class, that's when I start playing a song off of YouTube, and normally it was the Barney cleanup song. That's what the students liked, and so that's what I went with 95% of the time. That kind of gave them an indication that it's time to clean up, and it's time to get in gear on kind of hurrying, because they had a lot to do. First, they had to clean up their area. If they got the iron out or their sewing machines, they had to put that stuff up every single day. Second, students had to sit down, and like I just got in talking to you about with the writing down what they did, at this time, during that cleanup time, that's when they're going to sit down and write down everything they have accomplished that day. And if they get that done in time and there's still time left, they're going to stand up and they're going to start helping other people, because I stood at the door, and I encourage you to do this as well, but I stood at the door and I did not let anybody leave until everything was cleaned up. This really promoted helping your neighbor and helping your community clean up and make sure everything looked nice. When it comes to grading, I definitely recommend using a rubric to keep it consistent every project with every student. But also, don't be afraid to have them redo something. I actually had a student one time, she was a senior, and she came up to me with this lanyard piece that she made, and I said, oh, it looked all right. I said, but gosh, I said, you could have done so much better on this. And she said, I know. That's what I was thinking. I'll redo it. I was like, okay. I mean, if it was another student, I probably wouldn't have had them redo it because it would have been the best that they could do. But I knew that she could do better. And so I was kind of working my way to having her redo it, because I knew I could expect more out of her than what I was getting. So, and she knew it too. Also, always find a positive thing to say about their projects. That is going to encourage them so much. Even if the only thing that you can comment on is how pretty their fabric is. Use it. I mean, sometimes you even have to talk about how you notice that they did this and don't really explain whether or not it's a great thing or a bad thing, just so that they know that you're paying attention, and then you're kind of encouraging them to try a little harder. So that is it for this lesson, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.